Let me see. I'll just look it up.
Oh, well, okay. All right. Here, I'll read it this time. So, hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the podcast, the Just Pick Something podcast, where we discuss movies and TV shows and maybe at some point something different like short films or YouTube movies or something. But this time we're going to talk about Love, Death, and Robots, specifically season 3 of the anthology series. All the episodes were adaptations of very short stories, but some of them are actually original stories for the show. If you want to read the stories that they were adapted for the show, I made a list that you can reference in the description. But at the time of this episode, you can stream it on Netflix, and I'm really happy they haven't canceled this series because I love it. I'm a huge fan of this series, man. Are you?
So I watched a couple episodes of the first season that I really enjoyed.
The first season was the longest in like 18 episodes.
Yeah, so I watched like a couple. Season 2, I heard a lot of like mixed to bad things about, so I pretty much like stayed away from it.
Yeah.
And then this season, it was fairly fresh, and I was like, you know what? Some of these look pretty neat
Mm-hmm.
animation wise, and I didn't really give it a fair shake in the last 2 seasons. So like, let's see what season 3 has. If I enjoy it.
And so, did you enjoy it from here? Like, what do you think of season 3 so far?
So I mean, season 3 was solid overall. I would like to say that probably 2 or 3 of the episodes didn't like jive with me entirely, but for the most part, either the episodes were like solid or I very much enjoyed them.
That's cool.
But I think like 2 or 3 of them, I'm like, I don't know how I feel about it. Especially, I think there's one episode that we'll get to that's like I feel like I'm being contentious in regards to
Ooh.
how I feel about it.
I wonder which one it is. I have a guess because if it's the one I'm thinking about, there's been a few mixed reactions to that specific episode. But overall, I really love the series. When it was announced, I was like, oh shit, an anthology series. It's going to have something to do with sci-fi or death or like, I was like, hell yeah, man, sign me up. I think I watched the first season pretty soon after it came out. Like, I don't think I binge watched it all in one go, but I did finish it pretty quickly. And then, season 2 came out, super hyped. It was also kind of a mixed bag. It wasn't that episodes varied in like dramatic quality. It was that, they didn't really announce that season 2 was going to be significantly shorter. So season 1 had 18. Season 2 had 8.
Yeah.
It felt almost like not only was like the quantity so much lessened, but some of the episodes in season 2 were significantly shorter too, which isn't a bad thing. But when you just come from season 1 and then right into season 2, kind of want like more meat on that bone,
Yeah, I guess the curation could be a little bit better in regards to that.
Yeah, so you're just like, oh, well, that's kind of disappointing. It was just like, oh no, I guess it is what it is. So when season 3 came out and they're mostly longer episodes of, I would say, slightly better quality stories, I was super hyped and it was super awesome to see.
Yeah, I think again, not having like a real basis for opinion on the first 2 seasons, felt like this was fairly well crafted and coordinated in regards to like putting together like a series of vignettes and stuff.
Yeah, animated anthology episodes.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, yeah, like they curated this pretty well. They gave you like the appropriate, like, okay, this one's long, this one's not as long. Like you didn't feel like I never felt like it was like, oh man, I have to really take my time with that one. Like they never felt like a steep drop off in regards to like, oh man, like this is just like a terrible follow up to that last episode. It felt like, okay, everything flowed, and if there was like a tone shift, it was like, oh, this was like kind of helpful after that episode to like shift to this, to like ramp back up into certain ideas.
Yeah, like some of the episodes felt like palate cleansers almost when you were watching, right?
Very much.
Yeah, for sure. For me, the things I think from the show and in general that I really enjoy watching are sometimes when I've been left wanting to watch it again or feeling like there's something just clicked with me, And in this anthology series specifically, I've mentioned to you before, but one of my favorite episodes was Zima Blue in season 1. So I was really excited to, come back to the show and have this feeling of hopefully watching something that leaves me feeling existentially pondering about stuff. But I was just like, if that doesn't happen, it's still going to be a pretty good, entertaining watch,
Yeah. So do you want to start from the top?
Yeah, actually, I wanted to know, on your Netflix queue, was the first episode called the one with the robots?
Yes.
Yeah, 3 robots, exit strategy.
Yep.
Yeah, same here. And I was actually kind of really surprised to see that the first episode was a sequel to another episode.
I assume that's because, I mean, for like a casual viewer, again, like having only watched a couple episodes, like when I think Love, Death, and Robots, I actively think about the 3 robots episode from season 1.
Dude, it's such a good episode. I loved that episode with those 3 characters. I would love to watch a a show just about these three robots navigating through like a post-apocalyptic world,
Yeah.
even though they would have to do something a little different to maintain, a story that can span a season of TV. It fits really well into this like one episode or two episode and done kind of thing.
Mhm.
You get what it is trying to say, you get what the whole premise and the fun about it. But I was still like, oh shit, a sequel. That's awesome. Hell yeah, let's see it.
Yeah, I didn't know that like most of them not get sequels, or is it just
No, no, not really. Like I think they're all one-offs. This was the only sequel that I could remember. Yeah.
okay?
If you want like okay, direct sequel, there are returning animators or like production styles
Yeah,
that come back. So you can, say that some of them maybe feel like a spiritual sequel, right? Like
yeah.
in this
Like
season,
thematically or like like visually, they're
yeah, stylized or like tone wise, you're like, oh man, that was just like that one episode.
yeah.
But yeah, this is I think the only direct sequel.
Okay. I mean, I liked it. It was fun. It was a nice like way to step into the series because again, it feels fairly familiar. I didn't even have to worry about like, okay, like what did I miss? What kind of stuff am I looking forward to? And it's like, okay, here you go. You remember these guys.
Yeah.
I'm actually surprised. You saying that this is like the only sequel they have. I'm surprised that each season doesn't have like an episode with these guys
Hmm.
because that's what I would have assumed. I would have assumed every season had because these three are so iconic to the brand of Love Death Robots that I
I
would
mean,
have assumed that they made sure that there was an episode of them in every season.
well, they just feel so fully realized as characters. It's what makes me want to see more about them. They just the dynamic between the trio just works really well.
Yeah,
And like if it were to be a show, you would probably have to give one of them an ongoing plot. But other than that, man, it's just great to see these characters bounce off each other. Even though I think this episode was a little like mean-spirited at certain things, but at the same time, it was pretty funny.
yeah. I think it was. I think I do like the dark humor of it
Hmm.
personally. I thought it was kind of like
What, a little on the
the
nose or something?
yeah, a little on the nose. That's pretty much my main complaint would be is it's like you kind of knew where everything was going.
Hmm.
There was never really anything that was like super shocking about anything,
Yeah.
but it was also like you guys didn't really like it is familiar and it is easy, so it's like a nice first episode.
Yeah, I mean it doesn't really go anywhere new or tread new ground with this episode, right? It's mostly a rehash of the first episode that came out, right? Three robots having fun, being silly in the post-apocalyptic setting. You kind of get hints of what happened around the world to have caused this, and then you get a really cool, fun reveal at the very end, right? It works better in the first episode because you're like fresh and you don't know anything that's going on. And in the sequel, you kind of already have that primer. So it feels like it's like an episode you get to enjoy seeing this core dynamic again, and just be like, oh, that was fun. All right, next one.
Yeah.
I will say like it was pretty funny seeing the, I guess, expansion of some of the lore of like why humanity died.
Yeah.
Like in the first episode, it was kind of just like, oh yeah, it was pretty clear this happened or the hubris man, whatever. It was kind of funny being like, oh yeah, these tech billionaires, they thought they could just, use their money and go to the ocean and live without any societal structure or anything. It's mean spirited in a way, but it's like I don't really care if it's being mean to rich people. Like fuck them, fuck the rich people, man.
No, it's crazy. Like the idea that like it was interesting to see that it did go like progress in terms of like, oh, these are the poor people, these are the rich people, and then these are like the crazy rich people.
Yeah.
And so it was fun. That was fun in the progression. I didn't like the ending joke that much. I thought it was a little too on the nose. I liked it being a cat, but it also felt like, yeah, the Elon Musk thing was like, okay, yeah, no, that was a little much.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. I think it would have been a little better if they didn't say Elon Musk. If I thought it would have been better if they were just like, "What did you expect?" and then it just ends.
Yeah, because the cats were such a big thing of the first episode
Mm-hmm.
that like having them be the ending joke of the second one is funny in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't need to have the name drop in there, which I think is like an easy and like lazy name drop at this point.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, everyone like fuck Elon Musk. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much how everybody's reaction to it is, and I'm like, yeah, no.
Yeah, pretty
So need
much.
that.
And I think if I were to see these guys come back and hopefully or maybe become a series regular, like you suggested, surprisingly they don't have an episode of these guys in every season. Like I think it'd be nice for maybe one of them to find a human and be like, "Oh my god!" And like you get to see the three different robots react to a human.
I mean, I assumed that we were going to actually see some whatever was left of humanity at that point.
Yeah,
But like, okay, I mean, yeah, that's fine.
I mean, like, I mean, hey, that, like I said, that might make a compelling plot line for a potential spinoff if they ever decide to do one. But I'm just hoping they don't cancel the show at this point because Netflix has been in the news
Right.
for just canceling things left and right. Rest in peace, Bone animated
The
series.
amount of people who are leaving Netflix because of the cancellations, yeah, it's not looking good for them right now. But
Yeah,
all right, so the second one for you was it bad traveling?
it was actually, and this was probably one of my favorite of the season.
Oh yeah, by far. I think it was definitely the strongest narrative
I
of
mean,
all of
it
them.
was a tight story. It was like well done. The voice acting was on point. The music cues and the way the sound effects kind of hit at certain moments with like the swelling of the ocean and the reveal of the like monster lurking below the depths. It was
Yeah,
great, man.
really good lighting. I liked there's another episode in here with CG that I'm not a big fan of. That we'll get to at another point. But I like the CG in here. It is similar to like the CG you would the what was it called? Like the Tintin.
I'm trying to think
Uh,
of it too, but I know what you mean.
yeah, like it was like the earlier like when they try to do that like real close to photorealism
Hmm.
style, but it was still kind of like it was similar to that. It reminded me of it, but it didn't have like the uncanny valley issue that those did.
Yeah, yeah. I know that I think for some people, certain styles throughout this anthology series don't mesh with them well. But like I really enjoy seeing the different art styles and like animation styles with every episode. And in this one, I feel like the atmosphere on the seven seas, all the like rain and thundering kind of just worked to make you feel kind of, I don't know, it's like everyone felt wet, like miserable, you know?
Yeah, like the lighting, the textures, they all worked really well.
Hmm. I really liked the design of the monster too. It felt like a combination of like a crab tick thing.
Yeah.
Man, thinking of its babies with the little like blood sucking tick bodies. Ugh.
Yeah, no, that was disgusting. I hated that.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was it was so nasty. But I mean, like I like oh man, the way that that narrative progressed, I was like, man, like I like this character is like I don't know if I should trust him because he's clearly like willing to do what needs to be done,
Hmm. Yeah.
right? But like sometimes that's like you don't know. That doesn't necessarily mean he's a good guy, right? He
Yeah.
might be manipulating everybody else, and that's like the issue that I was like, man, like I don't know if I should trust this dude,
I
right?
mean, yeah, I really liked how I didn't know what was going to be the end goal, because it was like, well, are they going to get to the destination and there's going to be this huge betrayal? Or like, is he really like on their side or is he on his own side? Is he with the monster? It could go so many different ways. So as the story was playing out, it was just interesting to see those path lines close, and to get that final like betrayal from his one shipmate that was like, I didn't want to go along with the killing you at night, and then still kills him anyways.
Yeah.
It was felt very much like, have you ever played that game Werewolf?
Yes.
Yeah, it was kind of like, oh, there's a werewolf among us, and it's like, who is it? And then it's like, oh, it was me, and then everyone dies at the end. It was great.
It was very much like when he killed the two the brothers.
Hmm.
I like was the moment where I was like, wait, did he kill those two guys because they actually voted differently, or did he
Hmm.
kill those two guys because he knew that they were a liability at that point? And it's like it was one of those things where it was like I just the moral gray area of the characters throughout because there are some of the shipmates that I feel like you can kind of like a little bit.
Yeah, I did like some of the shipmates. I was like hoping they wouldn't die, right? By the end of the story, I wasn't hoping that he'd be the sole remainder survivor. I was like, man, I hope this crew gets it out alive somehow, right? And it just turns
Yeah.
out that it was just the one guy all along.
Oh, but yeah, it was. Oh, man, I loved how it ended
Hmm.
because it laid clear like the character did have good intentions, right?
Yeah, for sure.
It was very obvious, but at the same time, you felt like, oh man, like it had to be this way. There was no
Yeah,
way that this was gonna work if he didn't do
it
this.
feels like it set you up or primed you to kind of expect this because they all betrayed him at the beginning. So it was kind of like a revenge story almost a bit.
Yeah,
Yeah, but it was great, man. I think this was an original story adapted for the show.
Okay.
Yeah, because the
I didn't.
previous one.
I know I've never heard of any of these stories. I do know about one or two of them in regards to like them being short stories, but
Mhm,
this one I didn't know if it was. I thought it was because there's like the quotes at the beginning,
mhm.
like that's like a little bit of primer. But I
Yeah.
guess yeah. I mean, what is this like? Was this Ridley Scott or something like that that
No,
was attached?
no, I think
No,
they
David Fincher.
yeah, they have returning writers for these stories. Like the previous one was from I think a sequel to the original story for the show, but the original story, Three Robots, was a short story in a book called Robots versus Fairies by Dominic Parsons.
Interesting.
Yeah. I don't know how much was lifted, text to screen, but I do kind of want to check that out because I really do enjoy those characters. So if there's more of them like adventures, I might want to read more about it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Was the third episode for you, The Very Pulse of the Machine?
Yes, I feel like at this point we can just confirm that I think all the episodes were in order.
Yeah, I think
For both
three
of us.
would probably do it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, so the very pulse of the machine. This one was probably the first one that I was like a little mixed on. I just don't know if it was like it didn't necessarily grab my attention the way I think I wish it did.
Oh, really, man? I really like this one. I think this was top three for me.
I think visually it's gorgeous, it's phenomenal.
I
But
mean,
like,
the visual style did a lot for me, man. I was just really immersed with that like stylized atmosphere of the environments and her
yeah,
like face and the way like her experience kind of changed the like environment around her as she went through this planet. It was
yeah.
awesome.
I mean, I liked it visually. I liked the. I guess it didn't resonate with me like on an emotional level,
Hmm.
right? Like thematically, I just didn't feel it. But I did like yeah, like has like this like pop art type style, like somewhat like graphic novel comic booky, which some people would say. I don't.
No, I know what you mean. It felt very much like the cell shading of a graphic novel kind of aesthetic to
Yeah,
this.
like the old school cell shading. Yeah, I swore there was like a frame in it where that's what I thought of, and I was like, yeah, no, that's the style they're going for, and I dig it. I appreciate that, like in animation, being able to like bring in a very, I mean, you don't see that style very often in animation. To be able to tell this kind of story with it is very impressive.
The very pulse of the machine has like this slight existential feeling, which, as I mentioned in the beginning, I really like when a story does that. It leaves me kind of wondering about the, bigger overall place in the universe kind of thing, right? And with this story in particular, I think one of the things that I really liked about it is they inserted a bit of ambiguity about her journey on the planet because as she's trying to survive, right, there's that moment where she has to take the choice of does she want the medicine that might cause hallucinations or does she not? And she's like, I might as well die high. So she gets it. And then from that point, you're like, oh, is this the hallucination? Or is it like the bigger overall planet actually being alive in this unusual, unexpected way, right? And I
Yeah.
mean, I feel like, yeah, it might be a little easy to do or a storyline that like isn't the most original, but like it really worked for me. I really like that ambiguity they put in that.
It was definitely it was interesting to see like how it was presented story wise. Like and like the ending, I don't know if it meant that it was real or not. So I like the ambiguity of it all. I just think it's just like I know there's like an emotional core to it that for me personally, I was like, yeah, I don't think it hit. But I'm not necessarily gonna say it's like a bad. It was bad, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I really like the ideas this short was playing with. I think maybe it would have landed a little better if there was a little bit more screen time, or maybe it was extended a little longer in a way where you get to really see her thought process and like the despair of dying on this planet with no help coming, Maybe you just needed a little more something of like the dread of facing your mortality or something for it to land really good or really well. But I think it worked really well for however long its runtime was.
I will say that I think it is based. This one is based off an actual like series of comics.
Well, it might be
Or
with I feel like with sci-fi, especially this sci-fi story came out in the 1990s, right?
okay,
But with sci-fi sci-fi in general, like short stories, man, you never know if it's a re-adaptation of an older story, because man, sci-fi authors love referencing other classic sci-fi stuff, right? Like how many times has I Am Legend or The Omega Man or The Last Man on Earth been like remixed and adapted and put their own style upon, you know?
I mean,
Like,
oh man, I was listening to someone who talking about the originality of, like, people love to say that art isn't original, and it was crazy. They were like, yeah, if you didn't know this, only two of Shakespeare's plays were original works, not based on prior either history or story.
oh really? Which do you know
Yeah,
which one of those were? Like I
Hem-
know some obvious ones were like Henry VIII or something, you know?
yeah. So Henry VIII obviously is like, oh yeah, obviously that's based off of Henry VIII. But like, yeah, Tempest, and I don't remember the second one. But you know, like, when you think of like William Shakespeare, you're like, oh yeah, William Shakespeare, he wrote Romeo and Juliet, and you're like, that's that, and he's like, oh, did you know that Romeo and Juliet's not an entirely original story by that dude? He just made the most popular version of that story.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a crazy thing. I think it's a little unfair, or maybe that like talking point or that subject to bring up to kind of being like, oh, well, actually, did you know this? Kind of feels a little like, I don't know, trying to be smart just to one up someone, you know? Like, yeah, I mean, you could probably say everything is an inspiration behind something else, right? Like the hero's journey circle that people
Yeah,
reference all the time, right? Like someone did research about like how so many stories in our like can be brought back or like digested into a certain formula, but I still really like it. And I think that's what the fun of adapting is just keeping things up with the times or changing things or putting your own experiences in it, right?
your enjoyment of something doesn't necessarily have to come from it being original. It just happens to be, this is a really like, you can just enjoy the way that they decided to tell a story.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And like this story, it came out in the 1990s, like it was a short story, and it probably was adapted or remade or changed in its own way since then, you know?
Yeah.
It would be unsurprising. You can actually read it online pretty easily. I Googled the name of this episode to look into it, and it came up like top 5 Google results, you know?
But I think this is a good segue, talking about originality in regards to like stories you've seen 100 times.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Good point.
Because the next one, Night of the Mini Dead, man, the
Oh,
amount of times you've seen a zombie story go similar route, but I loved this
dude,
one.
this one was so fun. It
This
was
one-
like it's up there. I mean, this was a pretty solid season, but like what a interesting and creative way to approach a zombie story, you know?
I was like, yo, like the typical like vibes that you get from zombie stories of like the fear and like the tension and all of that. They're like, no, we stripped all of that away. We streamlined the story. We put it at this like angle where you're basically playing, like, it's like you're playing God in this moment and just seeing all these.
Yeah, everything is tilt shifted and
Yeah.
like miniatures and stuff. It's so fun.
And I
And
was like,
like,
yo, I loved.
oh man, what a palate cleanser too from the last episode. Like compared to
Yeah.
that one and this one. Oh man, talk about night and day in tone.
Yeah, this is, yeah. So I was talking with someone the other day about this season as well, and I said this was like one of my favorites, and they're like, "Really?" It was like kind of short, and they didn't really do much, and I was like, "Yeah, but like it was just such a fun way of approaching the subject matter and something you've seen a billion times." Again, we talk about the adaptation of it, like
Mhm.
this goes up there with like some of my favorite zombie movies, just because it felt, man, it feels like.
Like an entire genre compressed into 15 minutes or however long it
Yeah,
was.
it also felt like, playing a video game,
Mhm.
enjoying, like, there's like a level of control that you feel in regards to like seeing all these things happen,
Yeah.
and then it ends and it's like poof, that's it.
God, and it was so funny how they sprinkled all that humor throughout the like mini episode, right? The
Yeah.
short, like just the little bits of the environment kind of making their own jokes, like the statue crushing the guy at the very beginning, or the the zombies becoming radioactive
Oh
ghouls,
man,
or the president being like "fuck it" and he just launches the nukes or something.
exactly.
Oh,
I freaking loved. Yeah, it was so much fun to watch this one.
it was so short, but it was so great. This is one of another like episode that I would love to see more of, just in a different style, or maybe on YouTube or something, where it's super highly compressed, like takes of genres distilled into like 10-minute miniature formats. Like the zombie one would be great. Maybe seeing one with like a haunted house or an action movie or something would be just fun. Like they wouldn't have like the most long lived, span of time, but it'd be so fun to like see that pop up and then be like, hey man, check this out. I'll send you this really funny link to this great series on YouTube or something.
I feel like this lends itself really well to horror in particular,
Hmm.
because just do this exact same formatting, but then you set it at a lake and then say that, was it Jason who's the Friday the 13th?
Yeah, not the first one, but the rest of the series. Yeah.
Yeah, not the
Yeah.
first one, but you like, if you compressed all the Friday the 13th films and then put it into this like mini format, I feel like it would work perfectly.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And like compared to the other episodes, right? Like some of these episodes have such a cool style that I personally want to aspire to be able to make something of like this quality or level, right?
Yeah.
And this one, it feels like the most, yeah, you could do this at home if you really tried hard enough. Like you
Yeah.
could even do it with like Legos. Like it works and it feels so wow, someone hasn't done this before and it's so good.
No, it felt originally I thought it was like literal like miniatures that they like just did stop motion on, and I'm not sure if they did. For all I know, that's what they did, and which would have been dope. But just like, yeah, the style of it, like it felt like it was definitely a breath of fresh air when I was watching it. Like,
Yeah,
man, this is great.
it's so good to have funny ones in here too. Like as much as I love the serious and dramatic ones, man, the funny ones are always on point.
Yeah.
And like the next one, Kill Team Kill,
Yes.
man, this one was wild. I think this one had me laughing the most of just how over the top it was.
I mean, I'm a sucker for like stupid robots and this level of like 80s machismo. Like, I
Oh
think
god,
it's so much fun.
dude, the masculinity was just oozing out of the screen with all their muscles and the sweats and the blood.
Yeah, I know, 100%. Like, obviously there's like some jokes that aren't gonna land for you depending on how you're like feeling about it. Like, like it opens with someone peeing on your face. And like
Yeah.
it's like, I don't need that. But at the same time, it like leans into like, okay, no, like I get like the vibe of these characters.
Oh
Like
yeah.
they're like, and like the story that I'm getting out of this. And the freaking bear when it shows up and they're calling it a honey badger.
Mhm.
I was like, this is a dated joke, and I think it's freaking
I
hilarious.
mean, yeah, and like it's so over the top and it's so like silly that it's so hard to even take seriously. And I think that's the whole point. It's just fun. They even use the wrong terminology almost on purpose when they're just talking out loud, being their like overly masculine selves.
Yeah.
Like
And
I it was so fun to see like I guess just another spoof of like another genre that people know all about.
yeah, I think this was, yeah, so it was fun to like going from like the mini dead to this one so that they could like ramp up a little bit more again, because it literally started with, the robot went real deep into bad traveling,
Hmm.
kind of like, and then Pulse of the Machine, which is also kind of like a little more existential, and then it was like, all right, cool, you need a breather. You need these two episodes, which are both dumb and both very fun.
Yeah, yeah. It kind of reminds me of America the Motion Picture on Netflix too.
Oh yeah.
That's not a good movie,
Nope.
but it's a really bad movie in a really dumb, fun way.
Oh man, that movie's so dumb.
That movie was so dumb. Like God, it was so dumb. And like the craziest part about it, when I was watching that movie, kind of like this short, it was like there are some actually solid animation work in like the beginning and throughout that movie.
Yeah.
Some of the action scenes were so well choreographed and like done, and like it was just like, man, this does a lot to elevate this really bad trashy movie that I would probably watch with a bunch of friends, if I did at a different time. Kind of like this, I'd watch a movie of these guys or this kind of concept with friends and just laugh at the dumb absurdity of it all.
Yeah, I bet it would. It definitely felt like one of the things that I was like, yeah, no, I would watch more of this. If you had more story to tell, and I definitely feel like it would have been a lot of. They could have definitely had a lot more fun.
Mhm.
It does lead us into a more serious story, so we're done with the little lightheartedness for now.
Yeah, I don't
Um,
really have anything else to say about that one, man. And it's based off a book series that I think is equally probably as absurd and probably a fun read. But
sounds
yeah,
great.
I think it's called the series is called Snafu.
Okay. Okay.
It has I think this one was from one of the books that have like a shark biceps and muscles on the front cover of it. We could talk about the next
But
one.
yeah, so the next one I know is based off of a short story, and I know because I saw a lot of people discussing this one. This is the only one, the Swarm,
Hmm.
the sixth episode. The only one that I knew for sure was like based off a short story because people were like, "Oh, where does it go? What happens?" And people were like, "Yeah, no, that's the end of the short story. Sucks to be you."
Really, I didn't know anything about this one. I went in completely fresh into this
Yeah, I mean,
episode.
I did too. I just was like looking at what people's reaction to it
I
was.
didn't see much about this one online. I saw more about one coming up, but
Yeah,
this one was. I feel like the one later, Jibar, is the one I saw the most of because people were really vibing with the aesthetic and the look of it all.
yeah.
But this one kind of built up, and the discussion built up after the show had come out. People got a chance to digest and talk about it because this one was pretty
Yeah,
interesting.
this one was it was very simple in regards to like the storytelling. Like it's very much just like one person explains another thing to another person for the majority of it, right?
Hmm.
It's just like this is how it works. This is what you're going to be dealing with. This is what we're going to be doing for the next like X amount of time. And it's not super complex in regards to like what's going on in the story, but the setup is really good in regards to like the payoff for it all
Hmm.
feels really well earned
Yeah.
because you do get like just like tiny bit from that like exposition that you're gonna be like, okay, no, like that like ties into everything in the twist and payoff at the end of it.
No, no, I get what you mean. Something I really enjoyed about the beginning of this one was getting to see another alien species look completely unhumanoid or not
Yeah.
humanoid and still being able to like engage with the humanoid person. And it adds to that like bigger galactic feeling of it's like a short or quick way to world build in a very nice way where you're like, oh, I guess because of this one interaction, humanity is spacefaring. They've come into contact with intelligent life. They aren't trading. Like it just, you can keep guessing at the bigger world just solely off one constructed scene. And I think
Yeah.
that moment was a pretty good example of like really creative and well done world building with just a little bit of detail, you know?
Yeah, and like I was saying with the exposition, he did. I feel like that's really well done as well, where you get explained, the audience is explained through the characters that how the swarm works and
Mhm.
how they lack sentience and all these things, and just like the concept of how everything is handled in that society, quote
Mhm.
unquote society, and it's like, okay, yeah, no, I get that. And then when it comes to the ending, you get this revelation where it's like, oh yeah, no, it's totally within the parameters of what you have set up that this is what would happen.
Yeah.
And the leap that you get from the beginning of their society to where they are at the end of the short, it's like, oh yeah, no, 100%. I get why this happened and the little things that you have done in this story because it's not
Hmm.
very long, obviously,
Yeah.
like just perfectly just ran into it and it feels really complete. And I very much enjoyed this one because it was like it was able to handle and juggle like very heavy ideas but in like a very concise way.
Yeah, I really like this story because it feels like an origin movie, an origin story, kind of like there's a potential for something to be expanded upon. It's like reading the first chapter of of a book that you're like, "Oh man, I'm excited to see what happens with this alien species," you know? Like
Yeah.
the way they were describing the aliens and like how these aliens became modified and they don't have sentience and stuff. It kind of reminded me of this book or PDF creation that I was like super obsessed with. I would say like a few months ago called All Tomorrows. Have you ever heard of it?
No, I haven't.
Basically, it's called All Tomorrows, a billion year chronicle of the myriad species of mixed fortunes of man. It came out in like 2006 from a pen name of this Turkish artist,
Okay.
CM Kozerman, right? Anyways, the whole PDF is basically a really short read about like what would happen if you were to follow humans on the like timeline of not like a million years but like a billion years, because of a billion is a fuck ton of time,
Oh
right?
man, yeah, like the it's hard to imagine how long a billion is. It's
Yeah, considering that like on Earth, when we look at dinosaurs and extinct species, it's nowhere near a billion, you know? So the thing that I think that PDF and that story does really well is kind of just like this really bizarre imagining of like how evolution can take place for humanity over the course of a billion years. Because the story doesn't really follow like the war would happen, right? It's just like this alien race completely genetically alters humanity to like unrecognizable states. And this story kind of reminds me of that point in that story where, you know, these aliens could have been anything at some point, but because of their like interference by a stronger or more knowledgeable or just specifically adapted species of alien was able to win whatever altercation happened between them. The result was this seemingly unsentient species that at one point very much could have been intelligent. And I think the ending scene of this short kind of gives you the hint that humanity, no matter, you know, how strong we think we are, probably aren't going to be faring a good result at the end of it all, because they seem to be very adept at absorbing species and using them for their hive mind, right?
Yeah, no, it was definitely like the span of time, and in regards to like that, yeah, that concept in particular, where it's like, yeah, like what does it mean? Like what will like our race
Mhm.
be in the span of time like that this species operates on, right? Like they mention it specifically, like we operate on a different time scale than you because we've been around for so long. And
Yeah.
so like the idea that like how does that how like what does
Hmm.
humanity become when you've reached that level? I mean, it was very cool. I liked it visually a lot. Like the designs were really strong. The end design was like, oh, that's terrifying.
Yeah, man, especially that shot of that brain-like creature being at the very end with the
Yeah.
kind of like body horror of the human being like absorbed into it. Man, talk about unnerving and very well to like establish a horrific possible future for humanity going forward, you know? Like what a like I said, this feels like such a good origin first chapter, first episode of a longer series too.
Yeah, which is why that's why when I told you like the thing that I heard the most about this episode was like, yo, is there more? Like I know it's based off the story. Is there more to it? And people were like, nah, you're that's it. That's all you got.
Yeah, it's kind of like that one story I talked about just a second ago. Man, that would be a great episode or adaptation to do in like a documentary style format. I have friends who've probably heard me talk obsessively about this one
Yeah.
story I read and I was like super into. But yeah, man, I love when sci-fi kind of does something really cool like this. It's not like the most original thing, but like it's super cool to see executed really well. Okay, I don't know if I have as good as the segue as we previously had for the other ones, but talking about another good fusion of another episode, the next one, Mason's Rats, was really
You
fun.
know, so this one was super fun for me. I know the one of the people who worked on it is Joe Abercrombie. He's a pretty decent, like he's a pretty big writer, not necessarily of shows. He's a like mostly of books and stuff. So it was very interesting to see like how his tone translated into this style of story. And it was very I was like so I was like, man, this is actually this came across really well. I think it was very good. As again, it's one of the more humorous ones, which also helps it, but it's also like very dark, given that it's still humorous.
Mhm.
Still humorous.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely the previous one, Swarm, didn't have any more to read upon, but this one is like three short stories that you could read, and I think it's like $3 on Amazon Kindle or
Oh,
whatever.
okay.
But yeah, it's one of those writers that is pretty prominent in this series. Let me see, Neil Asher. Yeah, Neil Asher.
Okay.
I think has a few stories in this series or comes back to help write with the series. But yeah, man, this one was a lot of fun. It was super dark and it was like very, very vaguely, but I had the feeling of like Watership Down. This one, Mason's Rats, has Watership Down vibes to it. You know, just the war, the carnage, like don't leave a fellow soldier behind, and then they just have to persevere against this murder machine of like humanity's science and stuff.
Yeah, and I think it's very fun. The reason it's mostly like more of a fun story than it is like a horror, like terrifying like tragedy is because you get the perspective of the farmer the entire time.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you shift it to the rats, then you get like, oh yeah, the heroic sacrifices and like the
Mhm.
gruesome deaths. But because you're with the farmer the entire time, you're like, oh fuck, this is just like really nasty.
Yeah, he's just kind of like, God, this is. I think I fucked up. I think this is a fucked up thing to do. And like, I feel like the first sign of that is when the robot accidentally killed his cat, who had a name, and he was very torn up about, which I really like. I feel like it's not fun when stories kind of just blow off a person's attachment to their animal or like pet, being like, who cares? It's just a cat or a dog. But like, he looked a little sad, and it was nice. It was a nice detail to see.
Yeah, and like it was, and he you could tell that he was like, oh man, maybe I shouldn't be doing this to these rats.
Yeah. And then like the robot comes out and you don't see all the carnage either. It's just kind of implied, but you get to see a little bit of it. And the little you see is just so graphic. If it wasn't for the animated style and his reaction just being like, Jesus Christ, is that a pile of dead rat corpses?
And like when the robot like murders one of them by like throwing it in the air and then like basically like shooting it endlessly in like a beam of light, it felt like, and then it's like, yo, that seems like a little much.
Yeah, it was just like, can a robot actually enjoy murdering like rats to this extent? Because Jesus, man.
Definitely felt like it.
Yeah. It was like, oh man, if you know anyone that isn't super comfortable with any form of like animal death, this might not be the best episode to show them because I cannot handle animals death in movies really well. Like I really like that website, Does the Dog Die? Because oh man, it's just that weak point for me, man. It's just but this one wasn't as bad because of the almost comical nature of the absurd graphic death viscera, you know?
Yeah.
Oh man, and I really like how it ends. It's just a nice being like, all right, truce. I've gone too far with this. You guys, whatever you were doing, this was not worth it. Truce, truce. And they just have that little like tiny cup of alcohol, and he's like, oh, damn, good. This was good. Great touch.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think this was one of my favorite. Again, I only have like a couple of them, but they're very much like this one was very much like it hit like yeah. There's this one's fun. I like this one a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah, kind of like dark humor, kind of jokes, right?
Yeah, it is, and it wasn't like it, but it wasn't as dumb. It felt like it was like enjoyment that I had from the dumb humor of the Night of Many Dead and Kill Team Kill.
Yeah.
And this one felt more of a like a clever humor to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, for sure, sure.
But going from one of the ones that I very much enjoyed, I did not enjoy In Vaulted Halls Entombed.
Yeah, actually, neither did I. I thought it was a relatively weak one, even though I've seen some discourse online talking about how some people really like this one.
Really?
Yeah,
I felt like this was like the weakest one, probably.
I agree. I don't think this one was as strong. I know what it was going for and how it wanted to feel like a Lovecraftian vibe to it, but it was just okay, you know?
Yeah, so okay, so the progression of the story, right? For some reason, and I don't know if it's just that like we've seen this kind of stuff a bunch, or it was like something in it made me think of. I think what it was, I think I watched this season in two sittings,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So I watched,
With like the first half.
yeah, so like the first, I think I finished with Night of the Many Dead one day, and then I picked up with Kill Team Kill, right?
Oh man, what a good stopping point for one, and then still come back and watch the rest.
I feel like I feel like if anybody does that, that's what they should do. They're gonna do it in two. But I think Swarm kind of killed In Vaulted Halls for me because something about the creature design of like the like bugs or whatever in the beginning. I don't know if it like was like if it was Swarm that like kicked it off for me, or it was like, oh, this just kind of feels like the creatures from Swarm. Not necessarily visually, but like in regards to like design, where it's like, oh yeah, if you do this, these creatures are gonna do this to you, right?
Yeah, yeah, for
And
sure.
it felt like more of like it gave me that, you know, there's like the classic like, oh, you're in like the belly of a beast, the autoimmune system is gonna like attack these invaders even though like you don't think of them and like on that level of scale, right? And so so it made me think of Swarm because Swarm had like the warriors that are like, oh, if you do this, you're gonna get hurt. And so I think maybe I watched those a little too close together to like make it where it was like, yeah, no, this concept isn't new. It's not very interesting.
Yeah,
The animation definitely didn't help because I thought the character designs were really, not the character designs, but the character models were really weak. I knew that one of the guys was Joe Manganiello, but I was like, man, it looks kind of ugly for the most part. Not all of it, because I think at the very end, visually it looks super crazy.
Oh yeah, the ending kind of sticks the landing or raises it up quite a bit for me. The thing that I think
the scale also isn't terrible, like like how large and how small things are.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think that's what I like about this. I don't like the story too much up until they get to that huge, really, I guess, Lovecraftian altar site of unholy crazy demonic monstrosity, whatever,
Yeah.
right? Like, I think the story might work better if the team or the main protagonist was different. I really like stories like this when they're done right. The idea of, like, this otherworldly cosmic creature of unnameable description is really fun to me. I'm a big fan of like that aspect of Lovecraftian horror. I think the thing that gets me that's kind of like, oh, I've seen this a million times or whatever, it's just I kind of wish it wasn't another mercenary group or soldier group or people with guns to be all cool and deadly, and yet they can't handle this foe of undetermined creature design or whatever, right?
It's weird because it's like if it was like you're mentioning that, right, and you can be like, oh, it's kind of like Kill Team Kill,
Mhm.
and I'm like, but I would have preferred to see those guys do this.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's fun when if those guys were up against something like this, that would be hilarious, right? But like this just takes it so serious, and it takes it serious in a way that I've seen so many times, right? Like I don't know, it would have been cool if you kind of juxtapose that Lovecraftian monster with something like I don't know, like a little child, and you're just like, what the fuck? How did this child get here? How did they manage to get through this crazy gauntlet of monsters? Why is this person there? And then like if they come out at the end and they're like fine, and they're just like, oh shit, something's gonna happen, and because like how are they fine, or just something more creative with this approach or this story,
Yeah.
yeah, it just wasn't like my favorite. Probably fine, and if you really like this one, that's awesome. Just wasn't for me.
Yeah, I personally think this is my least favorite, so I
Yeah.
don't. Well, I don't know. So we're gonna go to the one that I like kind of alluded to the most in this entire conversation.
Same here, because I think I know where this is going, because this is probably one of my favorite episodes of this season.
Oh, okay, so Jibaro or something like that. I think
Jibaro, yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna say it like that because I think that's how they pronounce it.
So yeah, if I want to use my non-accented speech, right, Jibaro.
Jibaro.
Yeah, if I want to use my my accented language, right, so Jibaro.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude,
So this is your favorite?
one of my favorites. Yeah, it's
Okay.
hard. I don't think I have a number one, but it's like top three, top four, whatever. Yeah,
I
top favorites.
It's hard for me to decide how I feel about this one. I'm not necessarily saying it's bad.
Mhm.
It definitely falls into the category, and I know I think you've definitely watched the movie, but I'm sure it'll fall into the category for a lot of people of uncut gems, where it's intentionally trying to make you uncomfortable.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I can see that. I can see what you mean by that. Yeah.
I mainly say that because the sound design on this episode hurt.
Well,
I was like,
I think that was like one of the most amazing parts of it. I think that was super creative.
oh no, I mean like I appreciate it.
Mhm.
We talked about the house and how I
Mhm.
hated the one that was like super nasty to me.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
for this one, it was like like I have sensitive ears already to begin with.
Mhm.
So when you do all the sound and stuff, it got to the point where I was watching it and it got so overbearing that I muted it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was just not like it's literally uncomfortable, which is like
Wow,
it's
that's
not like a
interesting.
it's not like a critique of it because I know that's probably what they were going for based off
Mhm.
of like the characters and like the way
Yeah.
they decided to like design the situation, right? But it was
Yeah, well,
one of those.
the main antagonist is like a siren. Sorry, go ahead.
It didn't make for a comfortable viewing experience. Not necessarily making it meaning it's bad, but it doesn't make me like it. You know what I'm saying? Like if I rated this, I typically I used to like have like a hard rating score,
Mhm.
and for the most part, it was like cinematography, direction, stuff like that, right?
Okay, yeah.
And then the last one was my personal view on it, and I try to make sure that like it doesn't skew the rating so much, so it's only worth like 20% or whatever.
Mhm.
So it's like, oh, this one was good. It's like an 8 out of 10. It's like, why is it 8 out of 10? Because it got like nothing out of my personal score. Like, I'm not saying it's bad, and I'm not gonna say that it's bad, but I'll tell you that I didn't personally want to watch that again.
Oh man, that's I completely understand that and don't fault you for it at all. But I had the complete opposite reaction at the end of it. I was like, man, I can't wait to see that again. I gotta
I mean,
show my
visually,
wife
this thing
this.
is gorgeous.
Yeah, I it's like I gotta show this one to my wife. Probably gonna be super into it, or be like, "Hell yeah, this is dope!" You know,
Yeah.
like she might have the same reaction you did, but I'm like, I want to show more people this one because it's so cool.
It's visually they do a lot of cool stuff. I will say this,
Mhm,
speaking on the visuals, and I don't know if it's my TV or what I was watching it on,
mhm.
right? But was there like a dip in quality in the animation at point? Like it seemed like really like not rendered completely.
So I know what you mean. The first time I watched it, it got a little garbled with some of the effects while I was watching it. And then yeah, but then the second time I watched it, it was like, 4K, 1080, 1260. It was really high quality and I had no issues with it. I think it just might be, if your service dropped or not. Cause like the second time I watched it, I was like, oh yeah, it feels like I'm watching this with way more clarity than I did the first time, you know?
Yeah, because there were parts when I was watching it where like I would see like they had like the group of like what are they conquistadors or soldiers or whatever,
Yeah, well,
right?
I like that. That's one of the aspects that I liked. I think they were supposed to be conquistadors,
Yeah.
and it has this angle of like colonialism or commentary on colonialism. But yeah, they were some kind of conquistadors.
Yeah, so like, but like I would look at them and their armor and stuff looked like unrendered and like I was like, I very rarely ever throw this critique out there because I don't think it's actually like valid in any way. But
Mhm.
it's like it looks like I was like, this looks like PS2 graphics, right? And I was like, why the heck is it doing that? Because like it'll switch over and I'll be like, yo, this looks like a real person, and then it
Yeah.
will switch back to another thing and be like, this looks like a PS2 game.
Yeah, I mean, recently Corridor Digital did an episode where they briefly talked about one of the other episodes in this series that had the same animation studio behind it, right?
Yeah.
I think you and I both watched their content, and it was one of their CGI artists breakdown reacts kind of episodes.
Yeah, I love Corridor Digital.
Yeah, me too. And they had the one of the people that was a big fan of it talking about the CGI. And it's cool to know that this whole episode was completely CGI. So I think it might just come down to, bandwidth quality. And the second time I watched it, I also got a really high quality version. So it just might have come down to like,
The rendering of like of my service.
yeah, maybe, dude. It happens sometimes. Like, well,
Yeah, because there are points where it's like, oh my god, this is gorgeous. Like I'm like the detail in this is amazing,
mhm.
and other parts where I'm like, yo, did they visually drop the quality so that it also pisses me off?
No,
And I thought that was what was happening too, where it was like, okay, so and it was crazy, and I say this because it was crazy because it mostly happened when it was like the siren was always in like 4K,
yeah.
and then everybody else was like, yo, PS2 graphics.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I didn't think I experienced it that heavily. I It might have also been that I was like really engaged and
Yeah,
I was like, whoa, man, this is so cool because I love when the siren starts her like screeches
yeah.
and you just see like the conquistadors lose what seemingly like all body autonomy and they're just
Yeah, they're like
flailing.
dancing and like swinging their swords
Yeah, it's
around.
like this weird dance flail of like death where they just keep hurting each other. It didn't immediately click for me that the conquistador that survived was death. I was
Yeah,
just like watching it and experiencing it. And I was like, oh, it's interesting that the sound kind of cuts off a bit. And it's like, I guess he's just super distracted. And that maybe is the key that helped him survive, right? That piece of gold that he was looking at or the thing he picked up from the river.
yeah.
And so when all this carnage is going on around him, I'm like, yo, what the fuck is going on? Like, how's this dude not being affected by this, right? And then like kind of just plays on. And I think for me, what I enjoyed was this one just had a lot to dig and like try to analyze, Like I don't know.
Yeah, it was very much you got a lot of character out of both of the people without any dialogue. And it got like the implications of certain actions and the way they go about doing certain things.
Mm,
Not to like obviously not to like spoil too much, but it was like it was like there's like a level of gruesomeness to it, of like tragedy and arrogance, and like there's so much that
yeah.
they packed in story wise that like I said, I my personal view of it was like, yo, I hated watching this because the sound was like terrible.
Yeah.
But like if someone's like, Anthony, what did you think of it? I was like, yo, it was like really well done. The story was really well told and the animation was great, and the way that they went about like telling the story really worked. I just mute it for me, please, because I don't need to hear it. But I like, and it's interesting that they do such a good job. Like, I'm sure someone will be like, "Yo, you muted it. You like missed part of like you kind of missed something at the end of it." And I'm like, I don't think you do, because I like visually I can still understand what's going on and understand the implications of what people's actions are and how they're reacting to certain things happening. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I get that. I think you do lose a little bit of it because with the main creature being a siren and the way the sound effects are mixed and the sound editing, it feels like it's pretty intrinsic to the 15-minute long episode where all
Yeah.
the chaos that's happening, like you mentioned, maybe kind of like uncut gems, is a part of the viewing experience, right? Where you're just supposed to feel taken aback and like thrown off guard and stuff. But did you like take something away from it? Like I know we were talking about how there was a lot of people talking about this one. Like I've seen like articles. I have one pulled up that's like the director says that this Jibaro was a depiction of relationships between predators. And I was like, oh, that's a pretty interesting take or acknowledgement because I didn't really pick up on that the first time. I've seen someone else, maybe it was a different article, talking about how this is kind of like a, like a indigenous tribe revenge story or like something about colonialism. Did you pick anything up like that?
I, I thought it was. I did like there was like a base level of like relationships that I kind of got out of it, where it's like this person, like, like the basic idea where they're like, of the siren
Mm-hmm.
having the way that they are naturally
Mm-hmm.
just like has like leads to a very lonely life for them, and the idea that like maybe one time that they think that they have the ability to be with someone, that person isn't necessarily good for them
Yeah.
and doesn't have their best intention in heart. And so like I get like that level of like toxicity in relationships and stuff like that. I didn't think about it as like oh, both people are incredibly toxic, and I guess I should have, because obviously.
You could, in a way. Like, I wouldn't fault anyone for being like, yeah, fuck the conquistadors, those,
Yeah,
brutalizing, horrible, like, invaders from another land,
yeah,
like it would not be too surprising if someone took that away from this, because I really enjoyed seeing such a well done depiction of a siren. Like, I feel like I don't
yeah.
see that a lot, and it was so
It
cool.
was very unique in that regard too, because
Mhm.
usually it's like, like a typical like pretend the Little Mermaid is singing like kind of siren, where it's like so beautiful and like, yeah, they're deadly and they turn real ugly when you get close to them, but like usually it's like seductive in the way it works, and the way that they did her call in this one
Mhm.
was like, yo, this kind of sucks.
Yeah, well, now that it came out, I've watched it and I've looked into how people are responding to it and articles come it. I really like it more because there's so many more aspects of it that I was like, wow, that is a pretty cool detail I didn't pick up the first time. Like for me, I thought it was really cool how she was covered in all this jangly like jewelry and like clothes, and it was kind of like an aspect of the sound and the siren, monster characteristic to her. And then it was also like, oh, I guess you could see it as like these conquistadors searching for gold in this exotic country, and now
Yeah.
their like greed has come reckoning towards them in the form of a woman that wears what they desire the most and murders them all with it or something.
Yeah, I think like I wish like I wish I could like elaborate better on like the themes that I think it had. I think it definitely is probably the one that like elicits the most conversation
Mhm.
in regards to like looking at themes and
I
stuff.
mean, the art style does a lot too, right?
Yeah, the art style and the way that they decided to do the sound design, where it's like clearly that means something. Like, okay, so we've designed a bunch of characters who are naturally, when they move around, they're so loud and it's distracting. It's like, what does that mean thematically? Like, what are you trying to tell me about like how these characters are just like on a sound level, right? And it might be that it might like like, okay, there's like parallels. Okay, so they're both having like this metal like clanking that they both
Mhm.
have because of the coins and the metal skin and the armor and stuff like that. Then he has silver armor, she has gold, gold. She's like gold scales or something.
Gold coverings would probably be a good
Yeah.
description, right?
Yeah, because it was like I know she was like sharp. I wasn't sure if it was like maybe like a shark scale where it's like if you rub a shark, it's rough and you can
I
cut.
mean, that
Oh,
might be part like purposeful design to kind of highlight her siren aspect.
yeah, and so it was like okay, so like there's parallels in color and sound for both characters. One obviously there's death, there are sirens, so there's like a playing on the sound aspect of it in that regard. So it's like I think it has like a lot of the stuff that you can like. Okay, so what do these people symbolize? What do these people like? What does it mean when these people do this?
Mhm.
Right, and it's very interesting to like just like dig into like the details of this one. While I think a lot of them are a little bit more straightforward, and arguably the other one that's not as straightforward is Bad Traveling, which I think is like one of the best ones as well.
Mhm.
Where it's like yeah, like there's both of them like have like a lot to discuss.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't pick up on a lot of these at first watching it, but it's kind of like one of those. I don't know if you ever have this viewing experience where you watch something and you kind of feel like there's more there, but you just aren't aware of it just yet until it takes time to process. You
Yeah,
know?
I feel like that's how that's what I look for in movies, man, and TV shows. Like I try to get as much out of things as I can, and if there's not something there, then I like it kind of disappoints me,
Hmm.
right? And sometimes, sometimes there's like an art to the simplicity of things, but sometimes it's like there's like a lack of care in it as well, right? Like for example, like Night of the Mini Dead is a very simple story, right?
Yeah.
It's very simplistic. They don't really do anything that's like overt, but you can tell the craft and care they put into like doing the story
Yeah.
that it worked. But like I've complained about a number of movies over this podcast where it's like yeah no like just because it's fine doesn't mean like there's no meat there. It's just like okay,
Yeah, I mean,
you
I've
know.
been nitpicky at times too, and not that you've been nitpicky, but like, yeah, sometimes I'm just like, look, it's fine, but sometimes it just feels like there's something here that could be better or well better done or expanded upon in a way to make this thing stronger or maybe reduce some of this. And it's just like it's like in this one, I can see there's more to it and I want to analyze it because it's well done. And sometimes there's a movie where I'm like, this was fine. I can see there's good things here, and I wish there were more of these good things to make this thing better. Yeah, to dial it back into the conversation about the ending, this one about Love, Death, and Robots, right? Man, I really like this series. I really want to see more of it. I'm super hyped for a potential season 4 if Netflix doesn't cancel
Yeah,
it.
man. For me personally, I love anime. I just adore animation. It's my favorite, not my favorite medium, but it's my favorite like approach to storytelling. I tell people all the time. I was like, I'm a big comic book reader. I read regular books and I watch movies, and pretty much I consume stories any way I can, right? And I've told people like no matter what, the best way for you to tell this story 9 times out of 10 is animated. Yeah.
And like with Love, Death, and Robots, man, I just really like how the style changes. You get something new, and you get to see such a cool artistic depiction of stories in like different mediums and genres. And like, I just want another season, man, or another spiritual successor to this show eventually if it ever gets canceled.
Yeah,
You know?
I've heard complaints that some people think that they have a lot of samey styles throughout the 3 seasons. I haven't watched all 3 seasons, so I don't know if that's true. For me personally, just this season alone, even that the 3D animated ones are vastly different. The 2D esque ones, Kill Team Kill is 2D,
Hmm.
but then also the Pulse of the Machine is 2D esque, right?
Yeah.
And in that regard, it's like, oh, these, you can get so much mileage out of these stylistic choices and all these styles that I was like, I just want people to realize it's like, yo, like you can do so much and you can appreciate so much of the story and style from it being animated. Like, okay, this is I'm gonna go back to anime for like a sec. No, never mind. We're not doing this.
I
we
mean,
gotta wrap it
sorry
up.
if it's me, man, I'm sorry to keep drawing you in, you know?
Yeah, no. I've got to wrap it up. I think that it's perfectly possible with film technique and camera editing and all that stuff, perfectly reasonable to be like, look, just maybe sometimes this stuff looks better when you animate it. Because I'm be honest, the best looking Spider-Man movie of all time is an animated Spider-Man movie. And, and no matter how many times you animate a really good CGI sequence in a live action one, that CGI sequence is animation.
I mean, either that or just go for a style, man. Just commit to a style and don't deviate from it. Just stick with it, right?
Yeah, but there's a lot of artistic integrity that we can see in a lot of work, especially here in Love, Death, and Robots, right? You could see the craft and the passion that are put by these animators that I think we need to see a lot more of in our films, and we need to expect a lot more from our films. I don't like we've had a number of conversations about movies that I personally will say that don't have this level of care put into them, right? And
Hmm.
then you'll see the difference between our conversation. I personally will say that don't have this level of care put into them, right? And
Hmm.
then you'll see the difference between our conversations about movies that have that care to it. And that's it, like, but I'm saying like there's very clear different levels of quality and how much people can resonate with those things. Whether like, it only good craftsmanship only enhances a film,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And I wish I saw that more. And I think that we got a lot of that here, and it makes me really like this season of Love, Death, and Robots. I don't know about the rest of them. I don't know about any of the other episodes really, but at least this season, I appreciated a lot of the craft that was on display.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I think I love the series overall. There's some ones that are probably still like my favorites. If I'm talking about the series as a whole, I think it's going to be really hard for anything to top the emotional connection I had to
Zima Blue.
Zima Blue. Yeah, man. I've mentioned it to you before, but like
Oh no, I saw that one. That one's great. That one's the best one.
yeah, it's like I had the feeling that some people you might have, or some people are listening, if they ever look at a piece of abstract art and for some reason it just connects with them, and man, that episode just really hit really well for me, man. So yeah, that's probably still my favorite episode of the series as overall, but like it's such a wonderful show. And I think if you haven't seen any of Love, Death, and Robots, listening to this, you just decided to listen to some guys talk about season 3 of a show for some reason. That's cool, man, but you should go check it out. And with that, I think I want to say thanks for listening to this episode of Just Pick Something podcast. Go check out the show, go watch the series, watch individual episodes. It doesn't really matter. You can enjoy it all independently, individually, or all together as one cohesive show. It's so much fun. And with that, thanks for listening. The intro and outro song for this episode and this podcast is VHS Dreams by Sean Ivers. Link in the description as usual. And until next time.